$326 billion. That's how much wealth white developers legally took from black families using a single legal loophole. And it's still happening today. After the Civil War, many black landowners died without wills, largely because they didn't have access to legal services. In fact, this happened to about 81% of them. As a result, their land became what is known as heirs property, land that is collectively owned by all descendants, divided like shares in a company. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, heirs property is the leading cause of involuntary land loss among black families in America. Here's how the system is used. Developers track down a distant heir, someone who may not even realize they own a small fraction of the land. They purchase that share for a few hundred or a few $1,000s. Then, they go to court and force what is called a partition sale, where the entire property is auctioned off. The family members who actually live on the land, who have been there for generations, often cannot afford to compete with wealthy developers in a courthouse auction. As a result, they lose everything. One documented case reported by ProPublica took place in Bertie County, North Carolina. A company called Aldonia Farms purchased just 39% of a family's 18-acre property, land that included their great-grandmother's home, farmland, and woods passed down for generations. Even though the family still owned 61%, Aldonia Farms forced a court-ordered sale of the entire property. The family stood on the courthouse steps and watched their inheritance disappear. This is not an isolated case. Between 1910 and 1997, black families lost approximately 90% of their farmland. In 1910, black Americans owned around 19 million acres. Today, that number is less than 3 million. Research estimates the cumulative value of this lost land at least $326 billion in today's dollars. The targeting is not random, it is systematic. In some counties, black residents make up a small percentage of the population, yet represent a disproportionately high number of partition sale cases. Experts have described heirs property as one of the most significant and overlooked issues in land ownership today. And the impact goes even deeper. Families living on heirs property often cannot use their land as collateral. They may be unable to access USDA programs, secure loans, or even qualify for disaster assistance. When disasters strike or conditions decline, recovery becomes nearly impossible. At the same time, rising property taxes driven by surrounding development can force families off land they've held for generations. In some cases, they are even required to pay the legal fees of the developers who forced the sale, losing their land and being billed for it. This is where the problem becomes clear. You cannot scale regenerative systems on unstable land tenure. If ownership is fragile, then farming, conservation, and community become fragile too. That's why organizations like TASFRL exist, built on two core principles. Inclusive roots. Land stewardship must include those historically excluded. Regenerative futures. Land systems should continuously improve ecological health, community stability, and long-term economic viability. Because the reality is simple. When land is stable, communities invest. When communities invest, conservation scales. Because without intervention, this system doesn't stop. It continues, quietly, legally, and systematically. But there is a path forward. If you or your family are managing land, or facing uncertainty around ownership, access, or land use, take the first step. Visit https://www.tasfrl.org/news/heirs and start building stability before it's taken from you.